Please join me in welcoming Raina Gossett to Hampshire College.
Thank you. I mean, this is a thrilling event. I just, when I was back there listening to everyone speak, I was remembering one of the political principles that we have in community organizing, which is giving feedback is a gift, right? It is a gift to be told, this hurts, this is how you hurt me, this is how I want you to repair, this is how we want to move forward with an aim for transformation. When you're getting that kind of feedback, it is like a truth shower, and it's something that shows an investment in the relationship and the people in the room. So I think that it's really important just to open up with that and know that all of the work and the words of the people who have opened this event has been gifts to this audience. So thank you for that. And I'm just thrilled to be here. I love Hampshire College. It has been one of the places that many of us who are involved in movements for trans and gender nonconforming people's liberation have gathered every spring at the CLIP conference. We do so much movement building work here. The students are brilliant here, and I'm thrilled to be invited. I also have some allergies, so I'm going to be taking my time and sipping my water. So first off, I just want to say thank you to the students of Hampshire College who have put so much of themselves into the activism here. There is a long legacy of students here challenging and questioning the role of the institution itself. And you don't stop there. I love how you daily dismantle the violent logics of white supremacy and settler colonialism, ableism and transphobia, anti-Black racism, and the gender binary that underpin this institution. Like you're organizing around the resources and support for the James Baldwin Scholars being threatened while millions of dollars go to a shiny new quote-unquote green building. To me, as a person who loves disruptions, like that's the kind of direct action that I have done, that was brilliant, right? Because it interrupted business as usual and it illuminated the kind of austerity message that comes out of this institution, and a message that says who matters and who doesn't, right? And that's something that needs to be challenged. And we know that kind of message comes out of capitalism, and capitalism doesn't just affect our material condition, right? How much money we have in our pocket. It means that capitalism affects the immaterial. It affects how we feel about ourselves. It affects our interior condition, leaving traces of shame and pushing us so often into isolation. These violences are so naturalized that they are often accompanied with the message that if you are against this natural order, if you disrupt what the college is produced in, what it reproduces, what it fails to challenge, then you deserve everything coming your way. And I'm here to say that is wrong. We do not agree with that. So often, because of your activism, I've been really left in awe by the incredible response that you've had to this multi-layered form of oppression. Honestly, I cannot overstate how lifted so many of us who are done this activist work and community organizing for a long time, how moved we have been, and how lucky I feel to be here today. You have no doubt pushed the conversations that brought me on stage today, but my being here does not at all convey the depth of your work. It's simply a reflection back, one of many moments created by the work you've done and the work you'll continue to do. I know firsthand that being a student activist is exhausting and often unforgiving. Most of the time, in my experience, what the work produces is not the large material shifts we desire, and students are often left with the feeling that the college treats them like they are nobodies, that their life does not matter. Students are told again and again to be grateful to institutions that harm them, to be grateful for the opportunities afforded them by the institutions they pay in all of the material and immaterial ways we pay every day to attend, right? I know firsthand that this kind of activism can be exhausting and often unforgiving. Most of the time, in my experience, what the work produces, again, is not these large material shifts, but it's more of the immaterial. So, to all of you who have worked to make this institution look more like the world you want to see, even as you go into emotional and material debt while doing so, I see you. I want to share that debt with you. In many ways, the experience of doing activist work on a college campus is little different from doing it outside of this bubble, the Hampshire bubble, as I'm coming to learn. The work that I've done and that so many of us have done on culture, on the state, trying to make these institutions look more like the worlds we imagine. Often, we try so hard to change and transform powerful institutions, the college, the prison, the state perhaps, that we forget that many of them weren't built for us in the first place. They were built to be inhospitable. In 1982, the writer and activist June Jordan wrote a poem called From Sea to Shining Sea. It's one of my favorite poems. The love of my life, who's here, Liz Bishop, gave it to me for my birthday when I was particularly burnt out from community organizing. And it came along with some delicious ice cream, right? That's what I needed at the moment. The ice cream I immediately digested, but the poem took me much, much longer, right? It was the kind of gift, the kind of generosity that hits you in the shower years later, and I'm gonna read a little excerpt from it. The natural order is not about a good time. This was not a good time to be a child. This was not a good time to be a tree. This was not a good time to be a river. This was not a good time to be gay. This was not a good time to be black. This was not a good time to be a pomegranate or an orange. This was not a good time to be against the natural order. June Jordan knew, just like you know, that the world around us is not inhospitable by accident. It was, in actuality, built around the logic of inhospitality. Often, when I'm asked to speak in public, my role is to list the many forms of violence that intersect and collude to create this kind of inhospitality, to ensure, as the theorist and English professor Saidiya Hartman says, might mean that no life can be lived here, right? Because of my life, it's my job to bear witness to this violence and to speak truths that push others to recognize and realize the extent of it. Too often, my role is to remind the audience that the structure of this culture is one in which certain kinds of life, black life, poor life, trans life, disabled life, is marked as disposable, marked for incarceration, marked for death. I've been reminding people of this for a long time. I've spent over a decade writing about this, organizing around this, while also doing the work of surviving for myself in this world. And I'd be lying to say if that isn't exhausting, even relentless. I have said these truths so many times. Fighting to remind people of these realities means that so often I don't have the time or energy or the ability to say anything else. It means being a messenger and a harbinger. I know that the students here who have been engaging in that activism probably share similar feelings. It means that we have to talk about the ways we suffer, not the ways we live and dream, despite, even within that suffering. The way that we make a way out of no way. For many of us who do this activism that you have been doing so well here, we are often left exhausted. For me, my capacity is forever changed. The labor I did before activism, community organizing, I can't do anymore. You might find yourself in a similar place. I'm even more dependent on my relationships to be in the world and to be reflected back who I am. You might find out that while you want to be in practice around activism and organizing, you need to do it in a different way, in a way that isn't about stopping the state in a direct confrontation or doing more than your body can hold, in a way that isn't consistently heartbreaking, while still holding space for the power of grief and heartbreak, in a way that isn't focused on the institution now that you're leaving Hampshire, but is about rather how we are making meaning together in the shadow of any institution after we leave, in the land of the nobodies. That's what I want to talk about, the nobodies. Not just what we want to change within an institution or even what we want to dismantle, but what we want to grow. The world asks us to understand that the world we want to create relies on us this work, right, what we want to grow, this work to create the world we want, asks us to prefigure it, right, to model it through our relationships. Meaning, if we want a world without the institutions making up the prison industrial complex, we have to not just think about getting rid of prisons and police and jail, and not think about just getting rid of the ideologies of punishment and exile. But we have to think about how they take up space inside of ourselves. And to me, that starts with talking about our interior condition, right? And it is an especially good thing to do when we're exhausted from trying to change an institution like Hampshire. As Angela Davis recently said, I think our notions of what counts as radical change have changed over time. Self-care and healing and attention to the body and the spiritual dimension, all of this now is a part of radical social justice struggles. That wasn't the case before. And I think that now we're thinking deeply about the connection between interior life and what happens in the social world. Even those who are fighting against state violence or maybe college violence often incorporate impulses that are based on state violence in their relationships with people. This is what it means to prefigure the world. And this work is relational and social rather than learned in class, right? Like, we just learned a whole lot from all the people who spoke before me, and sometimes the classroom is one of the biggest obstacles to learning this work, to creating the world that we want to be in. So, and that all happened before I was asked to give this speech. Being asked to give this speech today means that, at least from the perspective of the college, is that I'm somewhat of a somebody, right? That as a somebody, I'm enough of a body, respected enough or known enough, maybe just by the activists in the room, to be worthy of giving this speech to you at all. Maybe that's about fame, maybe that's about clout, maybe that's about respect. Whatever it is, I spent enough of my life feeling like a nobody to feel how different it is to be called upon as a somebody. Some days it feels good to have an audience, to be shiny and to be above ground. But on days when my somebodyness, like so many other black somebodies who came before me, is entangled with commodification and extraction of my life and aesthetics and affect, it feels really bad and scarcity starts to set in. Other days it's terrifying that my somebodyness will dissipate because I won't be relevant and won't be able to make an impact. I think of the Anity song, where Anity sings about being a somebody, and she asks, "Why did you separate me from the earth? What did you have to gain?" Capitalism cares about the somebody. It cares about the individual. It wants individual figures separated from one another and from the very ground that has produced them. It wants the stage. It likes the figure because it is easily captured, easily tweeted about, easily recorded. It is hyper-visible. Like a dark mark on a light page or a bright mark on a dark page, a high contrast image, easily seen from a distance. We are told to be or to become distinguished figures, people who will come and address colleges, people who are separated from the ground that supports us. In art and design, and that's the work that I'm moving towards, this is called the figure-ground relationship, this play between visibility and support, between form and an informal. When I was in college, I was so afraid of not making an impact, of not being popular, of my teachers not thinking I was smart, of not being known by my peers or respected. I wish these fears had gone away after I left college. But what I've learned is that, if anything, college is just a training ground for those fears and anxieties which inform the world outside school as much as they do within it. As we know, we're always moving between institutions that make us feel like we've got to be the best, like we're one step away from being a nobody. Maybe that's college or the company you might work for, academia or the art world, the welfare system or public housing. All these institutions, as different as they seem, are built to make us feel like we're less than, like we're not enough, like we're nobody. So maybe you feel like hot shit when you're graduating Hampshire, and that's wonderful. Or maybe you feel like a nobody. Maybe sometimes you feel like hot shit, and other times you feel invisible. I want to say, at this college, built on the premise of success, of achieving it, of holding it, and reproducing it, that it's okay to be a nobody. And in this idea of nobody, I want to say that no one is nobody, that everyone is valuable, and that so much violence has been done to so many through the act of demeaning entire populations, namely Black and Indigenous people, queer, trans people, disabled people, and everyone living at the place of those entanglements. So much violence has been done to turn people into nobodies. But at the same time, a very small group of people, or certain specific people, have been deemed somebodies, right? They're the presidents of the institutions, they're the professors at the head of the class. They're deemed of value. We all know the damage that it can be done to be called a nobody, and yet there is power in that word, is what I want to offer this class. It's a power that Denise Ferreira da Silva cites when she asks, do we want to be a somebody under the state or under the institution, or do we want to be a nobody against it? Another way of saying this is, do we want to be visible subjects of an inhospitable institution earning good credit by doing actions it deems of consequence and important? Or do we want to go undercover, be fugitives, be unruly to the institution and its morals, unruly to its attempts at incorporation and assimilation? Maybe, and this is one of the hardest lessons I've learned, sometimes we need to do both. As nobodies, we run roots underground like rhizomes, like crabgrass, only to pop up above ground to do our thing, to bring our thing to the world, or to bring our thing back home. Because sometimes, when you're a nobody, you still gotta be a somebody for a moment. Sometimes you gotta get that job after you graduate. Sometimes you gotta get that degree. Sometimes you were sent to do a thing, sent in the way like Sylvia Rivera was sent, fought her way on stage at the Gay Pride Rally of 1973, a time when assimilation meant that the people whose life and labor was the very constitutional ground of the modern LGBT movement were made to feel uncomfortable within it and exiled from it. But she was sent and got on stage and roared that she's been trying to get up here all day for your gay brothers and your gay sisters in jail. What I'm trying to say is, it's okay to be a somebody in your nobodiness. There is pleasure in nobodiness. There is love and care and laughter. There is art and study. There is life. There is also danger and the need of an even greater love. So sometimes nobodies must be undercover, meaning if the state, the capitalism, surveillance want us to be visible somebodies, people who act of consequence, who get up and address large audiences, it might be a good time to be an undercover nobody. It might be a good time to be invisible. Put another way, if some of us who are somebodies need to remember the joy and the power of that less visible place that is actually so deeply visible to those in it, and so violently hyper-visible to those who seek to destroy it. Maybe it's walking home late at night, getting off on the feeling of being a ghost or an apparition, dancing in a crowded room and forgetting about the line between your body and another, writing what you do and sharing it with no one else, or sharing it with nobody else, the songs you sing to yourself or to nobody. These small, personal acts of nobodiness, of resistance and refusal create space for us to come together and support one another. At a time of heightened violence, just by hanging out with each other and taking care of each other, just by being less visible, by being invisible to structures and systems, we are doing revolutionary work. We are modeling the world that we want to live in. Let's let that commence. This whole speech is about double-dutching your way through contradictions. It's about realizing that the state or the college can trap you everywhere. The nobodies in the prisons, the somebodies chasing an illusory post-college dream that would never be fulfilled on a settler state built on stolen land and labor, but is still trying to build green buildings. That's why we are making a way out of no way. Which means it's okay to be a somebody in your nobodiness. It's okay to be a nobody in your somebodiness. It's okay to move through contradictions. There is no such thing as political purity, and the more time I spend reflecting on purity, the more time I want to be with the other broken people. Maybe being a nobody means It's not the work you're going to get hired to do. It might mean you're not going to get an award for it or get a research grant for it. And really, speaking up here about the work of the nobody is a failed attempt from the start. After all, it's out of sight. It's under the radar. It makes its own light. It's not for the college. It's not for the company. It's not for the state. Nobodiness is what we already are. It's always enough. It's enough if you feel like a nobody. With that, I'm going to close with a final excerpt and do that double Dutch of the June Jordan's poem, From Sea to Shining Sea. So where I left off was, this is not a good time to be black. This is not a good time to be a pomegranate or an orange. This is not a good time to be against the natural order. Wait a minute. Sucked by the tongue and the lips while the teeth release the succulence of all voluptuous disintegration, I am turning under trees. I am trailing blood into the rivers. I am walking loud along the streets. I am digging my nails and my heels into the land. I am opening my mouth. I am just about to touch the pomegranates piled up precarious. This is a good time. This is the best time. This is the only time to come together. Kicking, spilling, burly, whirling, messing, free, exploding like the seeds of a natural disorder. Thank you.